If you want to speak more articulately, more accurately, more natively, and more fluently, try this method. Some of you have read my free guide on how to use videos to improve your conversational English. That is a step-by-step written guide. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. My name is Isabella, and I create English episode to make English easy for non-native speakers. How to use videos to improve your English. Step 1. Wait. Back up. Step 0. There is a step 0. Step 0 is to choose a video that is interesting to you and that you can understand. I want you to be able to understand 70% or more of the video. Just most of it. You should understand most of it. I chose a video called Dost's Guide to Ruining Your Life by a philosophy channel called Unsolicited Advice, because I like philosophy, and I like Dostoevsky. It's advanced. If you are not advanced, do not choose this video. The creator speaks British English, so if you're only focused on American English, don't choose this video. The channel is about philosophy. If you hate philosophy, do not choose this video. The video is based on a novel by Dostoevsky. If you hate Dostoevsky, you should probably reevaluate your life. But in any case, do not choose this video. So now, step 0. You have picked a video that is very interesting to you at the appropriate level for you. Step 1. Watch this video without subtitles just to get the gist of what's happening here. What is this video about? Everyone around him and ultimately ruined his life. So when I watched this video for the first time, I just noted that this is a video about the main character from Notes from Underground and lessons that we can learn from him. Step 2. Watch the video again, this time with subtitles, and what you're going to do is analyze the language. What I mean by that is pay close attention to the language that they're using and think about how you might say something similar. Write down phrases and words that you don't know and that you don't use. This needs a little bit of explanation. If you know a word but you don't use it, that means you need to practice using it so that it will be available when you need it. So we all have words that we know, and we don't use those words. They're like in our brain somewhere, but we have to stop and think and go look for them, and sometimes we can't find them. So if you want to speak more articulately, more accurately, more natively, and more fluently, try this method. So in step 2, you're just making a list of words and phrases that you don't know and also words and phrases that you don't use. The second thing I want to mention about step 2, I want you to try to write down whole phrases instead of just words. When I went through this video, I wrote down words that I think a student might need to look up. So you can see that we have mostly phrases here with a couple of single words. We're trying to capture whole phrases when possible, and we're going to turn those single words into phrases later. I'll show you how. Also, I want you to notice how long this list is. I got all of these words and phrases from 3 minutes and 18 seconds of video. This is just a quarter of the actual video. You can get so much from one video. This is one reason that I recommend watching one video repeatedly. Working deeply with one video rather than skipping from video to video on different topics. What we're going to do is go through just the top 3 vocabulary words and phrases that I wrote down so you can see how to do this in depth. Step 3 has 3 parts. Look up definitions, find collocations, and write sentences. We're starting with the word spiteful. First, we look up the word. You can use any online dictionary or even ChatGPT to look up these words. I'm just using Merriam-Webster because it's a trusted, Free American English Dictionary. When we look up spiteful, we see that it's an adjective, and this definition is not helpful because it just says filled with or showing spite. So let's click on spite, and we see that it's a noun which means ill will or hatred. Okay. Let's check some synonyms. Malice, venom, hatred. Hatred is coming up again. So if spite, the noun, is hatred, spiteful, the adjective must be hateful. I am writing this definition from my own understanding and in my own words. I'm not copying anyone else's definition. The next thing we do in step 3 is to find collocations on Youglish. I actually do not know how to say it. I should probably look up how to pronounce Youglish. On Youglish, because it might be Weiglish. I'm just going to call it Youglish. I don't know. Many people know Youglish as a place where you can just go to look up pronunciation in different English accents, but you can also use this website to learn about grammar and usage as well. It is a killer resource for this. Let me show you how. Let's type in spiteful and look for phrases and collocations. Collocations are just words that are commonly used together. Spiteful or resentful, unjust and spiteful nature, angry and spiteful, mean and spiteful, drunk spiteful behavior. So we have quite a few phrases here that help us understand how to use this word and show us other words that are paired with the word spiteful. Resentful, unjust, angry, mean, spiteful nature, spiteful behavior. Something else you can do on Youglish is to change the accent. This is not just for pronunciation. This also helps with identifying usage differences. So if you're focused on American or British or any other accent, look at how many are here. You can use this feature to help make sure that the usage is correct as well as the pronunciation. By the way, if you like this video, hit like and subscribe to see more like this and support my work. The last thing we're going to do in step 3 is to make a few sentences using the word we just explored. So I wrote, spiteful and resentful people are difficult to be around. When we argue, he seems so angry and spiteful. Some children seem to have a spiteful nature. Notice that I made sentences using the collocations I found in the video clips, so I can be pretty sure that I'm using the word in the right way and in the right context. So those are the 3 parts of step 3, and we're going to do it again with the next word, middle management. I was hoping to find out what types of jobs are considered middle management, and the dictionary didn't help much with that. So I went to ChatGPT and asked a few follow-up questions. By the way, this is the perfect way to use ChatGPT for studying. Have your primary sources of information and ask ChatGPT for extra information or for more complicated information. Once you have a basic idea of what is going on with your subject, you can ask more intelligent questions, right? So you're going to get better quality information from ChatGPT. My first prompt was, give me job titles of middle management positions. By the way, when I ask AI a question, we call that a prompt. I am prompting it. The answer it gave was not really direct, but it does help me to understand what jobs are middle management. Department managers, project managers, people who manage teams. I prompted it again to ask, how big are these teams? How many people do middle managers manage? Okay, the answer, 5 to 50 people. So at this point, I have a pretty good idea of what it means to be a middle manager. So now we're going to go to Youglish and look for collocations. This time, I found, in middle management, in the middle management level, working in middle management, at the middle management level. So the first thing that we can see is that we use in with middle management. The second thing we can see is that we can talk about levels of management. That is a useful collocation. And then I have a question because, if you notice, we have two clips that mention level. One says, in middle management level, and the other says, at middle management level. So do we use in or at when we're talking about levels? This is what the groups are for. I took my question, I pretended I was a student for 5 seconds, I submitted my question to the group, and I got an answer within the first few minutes. Let's talk about these groups really quick. I am in the WhatsApp groups to answer questions. This is actually the whole purpose of the WhatsApp groups. Some people seem to think that they're like, "Hi, how are you?" English chats. They're actually not that. Those groups are intended to be support for courses. So when you have a question, bring your questions to the group. And this is another reason that I wanted to make this video, because I want to make sure that you guys understand how to use the resources that you have. So back to our example. Actually, the answer that I got from the group is correct. We do use at with levels. So it looks like it's better to say at the middle management level. I wrote a few example sentences. Some people in middle management don't have much power. I work at the middle management level. People working in middle management usually manage other managers. Now, let's move on to rail against. I'm getting these definitions from ChatGPT, and I'm getting these collocations from Youglish. We're looking at our first vocabulary phrase, rail against, and it's a verb phrase, which means to complain or protest strongly about something. And let's go to Youglish. I was able to find these collocations: rail against his government, rail against the pressure, rail against her system, rail against the mandates, rail against the decision, and rail against the notion. So we know that we can rail against the government, pressure, system, mandates, decision, and notion. There are more, of course, but that is enough to get us started with making example sentences. So I wrote, some citizens rail against the government. He railed against the mandates, but the decision remained. So that's how you do step 3. Step 4. Watch the video again, and this time shadow it. You are listening to the speaker and repeating what they say as close to the same time as possible. Your goal here is not only to practice pronunciation but also to get these vocabulary words and phrases more solidly into your brain. And the last step is to rinse and repeat. You can do this with any video. I recommend picking your favorite videos because you're going to be watching them repeatedly. But also try to pick videos that match your English level. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.